Emma Mijas died a horrible and painful death unnecessarily on her very first Christmas Eve 2004 at the hands of 25 doctors and nurses, another victim of medical malpractice. All 25 doctors and nurses systematically administered the wrong drugs for her life-threatening condition called SLOS. SLOS, Smith-Lemli-Optis syndrome, is a congenital abnormality which requires treatment strategies on supplying supplemental cholesterol. They gave Emma the wrong drug, Questran, not once, but 92 times. Yes, 92 times in 1 month. A cholesterol-reducing drug, not the cholesterol supplemental drug she needed. All of them knew better. They were trained to know better. They were some of the world's leading authorities at the Louisiana State University Health Science Center in New Orleans. But they just didn't give a damn about Emma's life. In 2013, the prestigious Journal of Patient Safety published a study that as many as 440,000 patients die each year from preventable medical errors. That would make medical errors the third leading cause of death in America, behind heart disease and cancer, which is second. These people are not dying from the illnesses that caused them to seek hospital care in the first place. No, they are dying from mistakes that hospitals could have prevented. What are these fatal errors? Who are these incompetent and negligent doctors? A New England Journal of Medicine, January 28, 2016 study reported that 1% of physicians accounted for 32% of paid malpractice claims over the last 10 years. The ugly truth is that little is being done to hold these dangerous doctors accountable. Researchers found that bad doctors showed distinctive characteristics, including having paid previous malpractice claims. So it stands to reason that healthcare providers could eliminate 1/3 of medical malpractice along with patients' pain and suffering, as well as the added cost of corrective surgeries, long-term care, and indemnity payments by removing the worst 1% of doctors. Why aren't bad doctors stopped from practicing? The answer lies, at least partially, in the National Practitioner Data Bank, a clearinghouse for information on medical malpractice that Congress established in 1986 to help state licensing boards police the healthcare industry. The national database was supposed to help states identify dangerous doctors and prevent them from harming more patients, and is used by hospitals, insurers, and licensing boards to track doctors' records, check prospective hires, and make other decisions. But it is virtually useless in holding doctors accountable because, by federal law, none are listed by name. They are assigned a random number to protect their identities. Even if doctors were identified in the data as they should be, the public would still be barred by law from accessing the records. So vulnerable, sick patients sit in the waiting rooms of bad physicians without a clue about their poor record of performance. And in many cases, a negligent doctor's insurance company pays the victim of malpractice and the doctor goes back to work. If a doctor develops a bad enough reputation in one town, he can move to a new state and continue practicing. This is unbelievable. But today, the public does not have access to the database to identify doctors' names and addresses, to identify doctors with uniquely long histories of being sued or disciplined for medical malpractice. Because on September 1st, 2011, the government cut off public access. What was behind that decision? Apparently, one Kansas doctor with a trail of malpractice suits, Dr. Robert Tenney. The Kansas-based doctor complained to the Government Health Resources and Service Administration that the Kansas City Star newspaper was publishing the story of one of his patients, Mary Beth Chase, who died in 2007 after undergoing a brain surgery with Dr. Tenney. It is also noted that Tenney has been sued at least 16 times for medical malpractice, but had never been disciplined by the state's licensing boards. The Insider Exclusive produced a TV story on this case with the lawyers who represented Mary Beth's family when doctors go bad, Mary Beth Chase versus Dr. Robert T. Tenney. Tenney finally settled the Chase family's wrongful death suit for $1 million. The settlement brought total malpractice payments paid on Tenney's behalf since the early 1990s to roughly $3.7 million. In some states, including California, Colorado, Georgia, and New York, patients can go to medical boards' websites to find out about doctors' malpractice histories, but not in Kansas and Missouri. Why don't doctors report on bad doctors? Physicians often see the mistakes made by their peers, which puts them in a sticky ethical situation. Should they tell the patient about a mistake made by a different doctor? Too often they don't. Why not? One reason is that doctors depend on each other for business. So a physician who breaks the code of silence may become known as an informer or snitch and lose referrals, a financial penalty. Doctors also may be wary of becoming entangled in a medical malpractice case or causing a colleague to face legal consequences. The bottom line, too often doctors aren't learning from errors, nor are patients getting the information they need to receive proper treatment or compensation when the outcome is harmful. In this Insider Exclusive Network TV special, America's Medical Malpractice Crisis, What You Need to Know, we visit with Jackson Schrumpf at the Schrumpf Law Office as we take you inside today's legal system, examining lawyers' strategies and clients' thoughts, and in vivid detail showing you the often heartbreaking stories of these clients, dramatically demonstrating what motivates Jackson to fight for his clients' causes. Here's just a few of the stories of many victims of medical malpractice that the Insider Exclusive Network TV shows have featured on network TV.
When the doctors gave me the choice and the options on the table, either to save her life or to let her pass, and peacefully without no pain, it was a small chance that she might live after surgery. But I chose life because I think that anybody deserves a fighting chance. So my wife and I decided to go ahead with the surgery and give her the chance to fight herself. My daughter Malia is special because she has a positive outlook on life in general, on how well she can accomplish things, how she's not different in any other way from anybody else besides the fact that her legs are metal. When I realized that this could have been possibly avoided by doctors seeing my daughter sooner, of course I was very angry. But I was also focusing on my daughter's condition at the present time. But it also made me think a lot about myself if I would have, demanded her to get attention sooner. I mean, there shouldn't be these things where we have to look back on it now and say, I wish I could have done this different. I wish I would have done this. Well, my daughter doesn't get that choice anymore. She has to live with this for the rest of her life. So hopefully this would be a learning experience for the doctors. That's why I would forgive them and tell them that, I mean, just get better at what you do or pay more attention.
She was a tremendous life, unbelievable energy. She threw parties and she had people over, and she always made dinners for anybody who was sick, and she got involved in every campfire girl, Boy Scout.
She was very capable, smart, giving, dedicated to her children, dedicated to me.
And I kept saying, Mom, what's wrong? What hurts? And she says, my abdomen. And she was miserable. And we said, well, please call a doctor. She needs to be examined. We asked him 3 times.
The nurse said they'd call the doctors. The doctors were aware of the problem, but the unfortunate part about it is the doctors never showed up.
And that's when I reached down and hugged her and I said, "We're here." And she opened her eyes.
When the doctors told me that I had to make a decision for my husband's amputations to survive or just let him go, that was very difficult for me. I had to think about it and pray about it and talk with my family. It was a hard decision and life-changing.
My wife has been an angel. She's stuck by me. She's done everything for me. My mom, my sisters, my brothers, my kids. Without them, I wouldn't have made it.
Dr. William J. Irwin failed to comply with the appropriate standard of care for an OB/GYN in the year 2007. And as a result, Rebecca Gatti, a newborn baby, suffered severe brain damage which is lifelong and irreversible. Those brutally frank words were how the Louisiana Medical Review Board explained to Ryan and Susan Gatti, the parents of their new baby girl Rebecca, why Rebecca had suffered irreversible brain damage due to the incompetence of Dr. Irwin, and now will require round-the-clock care for the rest of her life with no chance whatsoever for improvement.
Well, on the day that I gave birth to the boys, I was very scared. You know, it's first time you're getting all ready to your life to change. In the delivery room, they would monitor me and they had all this equipment on me, and then all of a sudden, when he pushed down on my stomach, when the placenta blew away from the uterus, I let out this really loud scream, and it was very painful. And then I just looked at my sister and I knew something was really wrong. I first realized something was wrong with Hunter. Well, he was in the NICU for a week, 8 days. And when he got released, they had told me that Hunter was going to have learning disabilities and he might be dyslexic, but they never mentioned that he may have cerebral palsy. If I had a chance to talk to the doctor today or directly to him, I would say, how dare you? How dare you take away the life that I was supposed to have? And how dare you do this to Joshua?
What I miss most about my mom are the holidays. The house was transformed. My biggest challenge with my mom gone is trying to step in her footsteps. Doctors who are not qualified to perform certain procedures, their license should be revoked. Dr. Jacobowitz, I don't have words. I don't have the words to express what your actions has done, the pain and the suffering that it has caused that can never be reversed.
These are just a few of the real medical malpractice victims who have dealt with our legal system victimized by bad doctors. This is why we all need to protect a legal system that is designed to protect us, and not one that protects incompetent and negligent doctors, nurses, hospitals, and their insurance companies over the common everyday American. Jackson Schrumpf of the Schrumpf Law Office is our featured lawyer and has earned the highest respect from citizens and lawyers alike as one of the best trial lawyers in Louisiana. He has seen many innocent and hardworking people injured and killed by negligent and incompetent doctors, hospitals, and nurses. Jackson's passion is problem solving. He approaches each case as a scientist trying to solve a puzzle. He has seen many patients suffer needless injury. And because of that, he is driven to help people who have been harmed by incompetent and negligent doctors. Jackson's goals to get justice and fairness for injured people, safeguard victims' rights, and to help guide the hands of justice. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Sulphur, Louisiana. It is my great pleasure to introduce Jackson Schrumpf to the show. Welcome to the show, Jackson.
Thank you for asking.
We are here in Sulphur, Louisiana, right outside Lake Charles, to talk a little bit about medical malpractice in the state of Louisiana. And I understand that your firm primarily specializes in that, correct?
Well, my firm has 4 lawyers in it, and we do all sorts of law, but my
you
specialty,
personally,
I have pretty much done a lot of medical malpractice.
yeah. And over and above that, and this is the reason we came here, is you have been an advocate for change, for the need to change some of the laws in the state of Louisiana that prevent victims from really recovering just compensation.
That's
okay?
right. In 1975, the Louisiana legislature adopted a cap on medical malpractice and other changes in the law.
Yeah.
And they have never adjusted that cap for inflation or anything else. Although in 1984, when the doctors found out that a cap of $500,000, which is actually $100,000 per healthcare provider with a maximum of $500,000, that was insufficient to take care of brain damaged babies and people with permanent injuries.
Right.
So they amended the law to include future unlimited medical. But our cap still covers all economic and non-economic damages. Pain, suffering, disfigurement, and so forth is capped in Louisiana.
And economic damages.
And economic damages.
Okay, so when we talk about a cap, what we're really saying the most that a victim or a victim's family can recover from a doctor who's negligent or incompetent. In other words, a jury found them to be responsible for the injuries or the death of their patient. The most that they can recover is a total of $500,000.
And possibly future medical coverage if it exceeds the $500,000.
Okay, and in many horrible, egregious cases, life care plans extend into the millions of dollars, don't they?
That's true.
Okay, there's many type of practices a lawyer can dedicate themselves to. You have dedicated yourself to medical malpractice. Why is that?
In 1988, a lady came to me whose husband had died. She had been treated for several years at a local hospital, and I found out in just short order through the research I did about medical malpractice and about the condition he had that it was treatable, that by 1957 the death rate from that condition was negligible, and he had a 95% chance of surviving if someone had just done what they needed to do to diagnose the problem. And that piqued my interest, and I have been involved in medical malpractice ever since.
Now, for our audience, because there's a lot of people that are watching this, have no idea what medical malpractice is. Now, you can define this as a doctor not holding up to their end of a reasonable standard of care. But again, those are words a lot of people don't understand. So explain to our audience exactly what is medical malpractice.
The Louisiana legislature has constantly expanded the definition. Sometimes it covers ambulance drivers. It could cover someone who just is an employee in a hospital.
Yes.
But technically it should be the violation of the standard of care by a professional medical person.
Right. But what does that mean? What is the standard of care? Is that the normal standard of care, what other doctors would do?
That is a problem because it's not really defined, and doctors define it as they feel like. And so what we do is we get experts. We hire people to tell us what is the way it should be done.
Yeah.
And they tell a jury, and actually the judge or the jury that's trying the case gets to decide whether the standard of care has been violated.
Yeah, and when you say you hire experts, this ultimately comes down to the battle of the experts, right?
It does.
It's who the jury, the judge, believes the most, right?
This is true.
So I've often asked this question: when you get an expert who is willing to testify against fellow doctors, they're hard to find, aren't they?
They're very difficult to find.
So
I don't find them in Louisiana.
You find them outside the state.
That's true.
Now, we all know the movie The Verdict with Paul Newman, and it was a medical malpractice case. Someone died as a result of that. And he eventually ended up with an expert who was, for lack of a better term, a professional expert, who basically had given up practicing medicine, was going around testifying in a lot of court cases. How do you avoid the problem of using the same expert over and over again? You can't, can you?
Well, you just look for an expert who is excellent in his field and has published articles, but you don't always find the right person.
Now, doctors are retaliated against for being experts on the plaintiff side for clients, right?
That has happened.
Yeah, and from my understanding, retaliated meaning that within their own fraternal professional associations, they start seeing a drop in the referrals from other physicians, right?
Drop in referrals would be one thing.
Drop of income.
Also, they have organizations which try to remove their credentials and things like that. There have been doctors who have been brought before their board to
say that you're unfit. You're an unfit doctor.
Because they testified against another doctor.
But what reason would they give? Because they testified against another doctor?
That's true.
That's the reason you can get kicked out of an organization?
It shouldn't be.
What should a person do if they suspect medical malpractice? And let me preface this by saying, oftentimes in a hospital setting, a doctor might come out of an operating room and say, I'm sorry, they're wearing a white coat, they look nice, they have great credentials. I'm sorry, we did all we could, but your father, your brother, your mother, your husband, your child died on the operating table. We did all we possibly could, and I'm sorry, okay? That's not always the truth about them doing all they possibly could, right?
It's not always the truth. Sometimes it is.
Yeah, so let's assume that everybody should assume it's not the truth, because you never know whether it's the truth or not, right?
Well, you have to investigate. So the first thing you do is collect the record.
Okay, so when you say you, the lay person has to investigate. The mother, the brother, the father, the surviving family. Now, what is the process that they have to go through, and what are the hurdles that they have to overcome?
First, they would want to contact an attorney that is experienced in medical malpractice.
Can't do this without an attorney, is that it?
Well,
it's too difficult.
Many people have attempted to do it, but the process is just too daunting. They can't make it through it. In Louisiana, to file a claim, the first thing you do is you file a request for a medical review panel.
You're talking about a lawyer filing a claim, right?
An individual can file their own claim.
Right.
They can file their own claim. But what happens is, in Louisiana, the medical review panel, 4.5% over about a 14-year period of the cases are favorable. The medical review panel rules in favor of the patient.
So
that means about 95% of the time, the three doctors on a medical review panel rule against the patient.
Yeah. And those three doctors are of the same specialty as the doctor that you're making a claim against,
That's
right? So it could be an orthopedic doctor, it could be an anesthesiologist, right? There will be comparable anesthesiologists, comparable orthopedic surgeons, whatever, right?
If you're suing an orthopedic doctor, then you have to have three orthopedic doctors.
Yeah. Most of the claims that are filed with the Louisiana Medical Review Board are denied as viable claims, correct?
95% of them over a 14-year period were turned down. Let me go a step further on that.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this question. When the Medical Review Board gets back to you and says, we've denied the claim, the only way you move forward is you have to have an expert to corroborate, to substantiate your claim, correct?
That's
a credible
true.
Expert.
And the reason for that is the medical review panel opinion is admissible against you at trial.
Yeah.
So if you go forward with a lawsuit, after the medical review panel opinion is written, you have 90 days to file a lawsuit.
Yeah.
If you go forward with it without an expert, then they will file a motion for summary judgment, attach the medical review panel opinion, and you'll be thrown out of court.
Yeah, forever. You can never go back again.
True.
So
also, Louisiana has a 1-year, 3-year rule. You have to file suit within 1 year, or file a request for a medical review panel within 1 year of the event of malpractice.
Right, statute of limitations.
That's right.
Right.
It used to be you could file on a child, for instance, 1 year after they turned 21.
Yeah.
So you had almost 22 years to file a suit.
Right.
That's no longer the case.
Yeah.
It's a shorter period. Now, if you don't know there's malpractice and you discover it within 3 years of the event, you can still file if you file suit within 1 year of discovery.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about that. If you don't know there's malpractice, how
Let me
would
give
you...
you an example.
Yeah.
A woman goes in to have her tubes bilaterally tied so that she can't have babies in the future.
Yes.
Well, within 3 years, she gets pregnant and then gets the record and finds out that the doctor knew or should have known that he didn't get both tubes. He tied a vein or something instead of...
What about in 4 years she gets pregnant? She's out of luck?
She's out of luck in Louisiana.
Okay.
Our Supreme Court has decided in Everett versus Goldman that it doesn't matter.
You know, this seems to be not fair.
It is unfair.
You know, you're penalizing somebody for not knowing what happened. They had no reason to even investigate it. I mean, how would you investigate whether your tubes were tied or not effectively?
Our Constitution grants citizens the right to pursue a claim if they've been damaged.
Yeah.
And our Constitution would have that law declared unconstitutional.
Now, you're an advocate for change in Louisiana.
Yes, sir.
In your neighbor state in Florida, there have been challenges to the caps over there too. And I remember, I think it was about a year ago, there was a challenge to the cap for a wrongful death case committed in a medical malpractice case. There was, I don't know what the cap was at that time, but it's now unlimited if my memory serves me correctly. You're aware of this?
I know that Florida has had a cap several times, and several times it has been declared unconstitutional.
Yeah.
Illinois also.
Yes.
3 times, if I may, 3 times the legislature in Illinois adopted a cap.
Right.
And 3 times the Supreme Court of Illinois has declared it unconstitutional.
Yeah, because it's written into the Illinois Constitution, state constitution, that you can't have caps. I think it is.
No, it's in Arizona. It's written.
Arizona too.
Yes, sir.
Arizona. Well, I was going to say Arizona because it's a red state. You know, it's also a non-cap state.
In Illinois, the basis for it was separation of powers.
Oh, okay.
Or right to jury trial. Or in Louisiana, there's been challenges under equal protection and other grounds.
And all of them have failed. Yes.
In Louisiana, all of them have failed.
And why is that? I mean,
our Supreme Court believes it's okay, and it's the legislature's.
I mean, when a victim comes into your office and you say to them, "You've got a very good case. I think we can win this, or get it settled, or whatever. But I want you to be aware that there is a cap. There is a maximum amount of money that you can recover for the death of your husband, for the death of your baby, for the quadriplegia of your wife or whatever, of $500,000. They're all surprised, aren't they?
They're surprised. No one seems to know that exists. Even doctors don't know that it exists. I took the deposition of a dentist who bought $1 million policy out of a company from Florida.
Yeah.
And I asked him why he bought $1 million policy when there's the maximum he could be held liable for in Louisiana is $100,000.
Yeah.
He didn't know that.
Okay. Let's define that again, because you brought this up a couple of times. In the state of Louisiana, you have a $500,000 cap, maximum amount of money that can be paid for non-economic and economic damages. Okay? But you have brought up $100,000 per provider. Okay, so provider could be a doctor, yes?
A doctor or
could
a hospital.
Okay, let's say there's a doctor and an insurance company. Is that 2 parties?
No, that's 1 party.
So the doctor will only be held responsible for $100,000, not $500,000.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
His insurance company.
There's a patient compensation fund in Louisiana that also collects premiums, and they can be liable for up to an additional $400,000 If the doctor's found liable, he pays his $100,000. The PCF, Patient Compensation Fund, can pay up to $400,000.
So when you add up 400 and 100,000, that's 500,000, but that's really not taking into consideration for any economic damages, is it?
Well, in Louisiana, economic damages are included in that $500,000.
So let me ask you, 42...
Miss Arrington, for instance,
Yeah.
her husband's economic loss was $500,000.
Yeah.
So that used up the entire cap.
So let me ask you this. 42 years after your cap was passed in this state, 1975, right?
Yes,
Is that
sir.
42 years? Yeah, 42 years. Don't enough Louisianians, is that the way you say it, Louisianians?
That's good English.
Don't enough of them know that these laws are very unfair to them?
No one ever thinks about it until it happens to them.
Right.
And the widows and the mothers of deceased children
Yeah.
don't have lobbyists. The insurance companies do.
Okay, so let's talk about a medical review board. Is this also the medical review board that reviews the doctor's license should he be sued several times and commit several terrible mistakes on patients?
No, sir.
Okay.
The Board of Medical Examiners in Louisiana is the one that deals with licensing of physicians.
Yeah.
And generally they don't look at medical malpractice cases. Now, if the doctor gets arrested for
Yeah.
giving out drugs, they'll look into that.
A doctor can lose his license for having sex with a patient and giving out drugs, right?
This
Is that
is
it?
true.
That's about it.
In the Taylor case,
Yeah.
that physician had previously been found responsible for the death of a minor child,
Yeah.
a baby that he delivered.
Right.
At the time of the Taylor case, he had 14 pending cases
Yeah.
pending with the Patient Compensation Fund, as well as the Taylor case.
Yeah.
And he did not lose his license. He wasn't even brought in for examination before the board. He did eventually lose his medical license because he didn't pay his dues.
Yeah. For anybody who's considering having really serious surgery, they'd like to do a little homework. That makes all the sense in the world. How can you find out about potential doctors? How do you find out, for example, how many pending lawsuits they have against them?
It's pretty much secret.
Okay, why is it secret? Because
To protect the doctors, I guess. It's not there to protect the patients.
Yeah.
There is a national database of the National Practitioner
Yeah.
Database that lists settlements that doctors have made, but it's not available to plaintiffs' lawyers and it's not available to the general public.
Right.
There used to be a database of bad doctors, but something happened to that. It disappeared. I can't find anything on.
Yeah,
bad
well, I can
doctors
tell you
anymore.
what happened. A guy by the name of Dr. Robert Tenney sued the government, and I think they converted, the National Practitioners Database from names to numbers now, so it makes it impossible to find out anything about a doctor. Okay, and he eventually lost his license thanks to us in the state of Kansas. Let me ask you this.
Congratulations.
Let me ask you this. What else? You're an advocate for change, okay, with the medical malpractice restrictions, caps that they have in the state of Louisiana. What do you have to say to everybody in Louisiana and America about what needs to be done and how we're going to do it?
I think that we should trust the jury system.
Okay.
The Seventh Amendment guarantees jury trials
Sure.
to citizens, to people that need it.
Yes.
It's been that way since the 1215s, since
Yeah.
It's been centuries that we trust the jury.
Yeah.
But here, we're going to let the legislature decide in advance, without hearing the testimony or the witnesses or the evidence, that the maximum someone can get is $100,000 per health care provider.
Yeah.
This is an unfair system.
Yeah.
We should go back to trusting the judiciary.
So how do we change this?
Well, one way would be to declare the medical malpractice cap unconstitutional.
Yeah. And there have been challenges to that, right?
There have been several challenges
We
in
have-
Louisiana.
We have two of your clients here today, which we're going to bring on in a minute, that you took their cases to the Louisiana State Supreme Court twice. Is that right?
Actually, it went to the Supreme Court 4 times.
4 times. For
But the
each
Supreme
each
Court-
case?
The Supreme Court of Louisiana never accepted the case. They never ordered the record up, never looked at it.
So let me ask you, do you think the judges up there are crooked?
I would never say that. There are
Well, just between you, me, and America, what do you think?
there are differing political views. Even right now, there's an article, House Resolution 1215 in the Congress, where they're proposing to introduce a cap of $250,000. Why? They say
Nationwide?
nationwide.
For
Why?
pain and suffering?
Well, for non-economic damages.
Yeah.
But still, their thinking is that this will make it cheaper because
Yeah.
doctors won't have to buy as much insurance.
Yeah.
Well, that's a falsehood, because in Louisiana, in the Arrington case, there was a $10 million insurance policy.
Yeah.
The cap has nothing to do with how much insurance they have.
Yeah.
The Louisiana Medical Mutual Insurance Company sells policy in excess of the $100,000 to their policyholders. They sell $500,000 policies, double covering the PCF share. They sell policies of $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, and $5 million.
Right.
There's no limit on how much profit the insurance companies can make.
Yeah.
There's no limit on how much the policies are that they can sell.
Okay, we're going to talk about that some more, but I want to bring on your clients that you represented, Sharon Taylor and Susan Arrington, right now. It is my great pleasure to introduce Sharon Taylor and Susan Arrington to the show. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
The reason we have you here today is you were represented by Schrumpf in your medical malpractice cases, and you lived a long, torturous journey to try and get justice for the loss of your loved ones. Would you tell us, Sharon, what happened in your case?
In October 29th, 1994, I gave birth to my first child.
Mm-hmm.
Got to the hospital, and the doctor delivered him. He was breech, double foot link breech. So
Right.
the doctor delivered him breech, separated his brainstem,
Yeah.
and he.
This doctor pushed on your stomach to deliver the
Yes,
child,
sir.
right? And I understand the doctor had been working, he had just come off another shift, some other place, working, 24 hours?
I think so. Yes,
So he
sir.
was not really not there, like in the head, to be
Right.
able to do a good job.
Right.
And what happened?
They separated his brainstem.
Uh-huh.
His brain started bleeding and hemorrhaging, and they had to run platelets to stop the bleeding.
Yeah,
He lived for 25 days,
right.
and we had to wait for the swelling to go down to see how much brain damage was done, and he was brain dead.
Yeah, I'm sorry for your loss. So let me ask you this. Initially, when you were at the hospital, the doctors and probably the hospital didn't come out and say, hey, we screwed up, sorry.
No.
What did they say to you?
Actually, this doctor, in one of his depositions, said he didn't do anything wrong.
Okay, but even before the deposition, what did the hospital say to you?
That, like it was just something natural that happens and
Yeah.
normal.
Act of God. We did our best. Did
Right.
they use those words?
Mhm.
Okay. So when did you start to suspect that maybe they didn't do their best, that maybe something hadn't gone the way it was supposed to?
Well, everyone we talked to, when you have a double foot link breech delivery,
Yeah.
you don't pull and tug on the baby.
Yeah.
You know, so we just started questioning around and talking to different.
Mm-hmm.
We talked to a couple of different lawyers and stuff, and then we got a hold of Mr. Schrumpf, and he done a lot of investigating and a lot of work, and he'll never be able to be repaid for the work and effort he's put into this to get justice for my baby.
Right. Susan, what happened in your situation?
Well, in my situation, my husband was short of breath one day. So we went
And
to,
he was how old?
he was 42.
Okay.
So we went to the doctor, and the doctor said, you have an enlarged heart, and there's something going on, and I want you to be admitted right now to the hospital. And he gave us a note, and we went right to the hospital. When we went to the hospital, they put him on oxygen, and
You went to the emergency
we
room.
went to the emergency room,
Okay.
Lake Area Medical.
And you saw an ER doctor.
We saw an ER doctor,
Okay.
and the doctor couldn't find anything wrong with my husband. So and he was breathing a little bit better on the oxygen. So we went home, and as soon as we got home, he started having really bad breathing problems. So we called to get in with another doctor the next day, but my husband died that night.
Okay.
We called 911 because he couldn't breathe, and he had had a pulmonary embolism.
Okay.
So
Which the first doctor had missed.
Well, the first doctor,
The ER doctor.
the ER doctor, yes, he
Yeah.
totally missed that.
Okay, so now, you know, both of you are just normal, everyday, average citizens, and I would suspect that in your lifetime, like most of us, when a doctor tells us something, we believe it, right? I mean, why would he lie to us, right? Right?
We put our trust in the doctor.
Exactly. Put our trust in the doctor. So your husband passed on. When did you start to suspect maybe something had not gone the way it was supposed to?
Well, the night that we had, the day of his funeral, people just kept coming to the house, and they kept saying, "Do you really know what happened?" And at that time, I did not know exactly what happened until I'd gotten the coroner's report.
Okay.
And
what the coroner's report said?
the coroner's report said that there was a clot in the lungs that had collapsed the lungs, and it was on the way to the heart.
Okay.
And the clot had been there probably for a whole day or two.
Okay, so you
But-
automatically assume when you're reading this that, hey, they should have detected it, right?
Right.
Okay.
But after the funeral, quite a few of my friends friends and acquaintances, and some of them in the medical field and some of them not, said, well, your husband was just in the hospital the day before
Yes.
in the ER. So you don't think maybe something illegal happened?
Yeah. Now, in both of your cases, did you individually contact the doctor or the hospital by yourself first?
No.
You did not. And why didn't you?
Didn't really know where to begin.
Yeah. And people recommended go see a lawyer.
Right.
Okay, how about your case? Did you contact, it seems to me you would be the kind of person that would contact the hospital and says, you know, I don't believe you people.
No, I was emotionally unable really to do anything with two little children at home
Yeah.
crying because their daddy is dead.
Yeah.
I mean, I barely could leave the house for months.
Yeah.
Just to get them to school,
Right.
if they would go to school, was
So
hard
then-
enough. So no, I did not contact the hospital.
Yeah. So finally somebody recommended go to a lawyer for you too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you've had this long journey of dealing with the Louisiana State Medical Board, their report. By the way, in both of your cases, what did the Medical Review Board come back? Do you know what they came back? Did they find those doctors
They found my doctor at fault.
at fault? What
and the
about yours?
hospital.
So from my understanding, that 95% of the time they come back and say the doctor's not at fault. You're one of those rare 5% where they said that, and then what did you feel then? Wow, this is good. This is a good thing. He's going to be held responsible, correct? Did you know at that time there was such a thing as a cap, a
No, I
maximum
didn't
amount
know.
of money
No.
that can be paid to victims' families in these cases? You didn't know that.
I didn't know.
Okay,
I just
when-
assumed
Yeah.
that there was.
When did you learn this? I'm just curious. That there was a maximum amount of money.
I found out when Mr. Schrumpf told me that there was a capped amount.
Yeah.
And at that time, I just assumed that if the jury found the doctor at fault for my
Yeah.
husband's death,
Right.
that I would be awarded what the jury decided.
Whatever that amount of money was.
Mhm.
And your husband was working at the time, right? He was fully employed, correct?
Yes, he was
He
fully
was
employed.
42 years old. He had another 25 years or whatever. So there was a loss of income. There's been a loss of income over the
Yes.
last few years, right? You thought you would be awarded that. You knew a little bit about the system there, okay? What were your initial reactions when you found out that the most, if you were successful at recovering at a jury award, would be $500,000? What was your reaction?
I was shocked
Yeah,
because at that time I only worked part-time jobs and I had
Yeah.
two small children.
how am I going to take care of my family?
I did not have any idea
Yeah.
I was going to take care
Yeah,
of them, and I knew that with court costs and lawyer costs and funeral expenses, I knew that was not going to be enough money.
How about you, Sharon?
I thought it was unfair because how can you put a price tag on a child's life?
Yeah.
Or a person's life, for that matter, when someone else is at fault.
By the way, do you know if your doctors are still practicing medicine in the state
My
of Louisiana?
doctor's still practicing.
Still
No,
practicing.
it's not. I think he's passed away.
Now that you are unfortunately very well educated on the medical laws, the medical malpractice laws in the state of Louisiana, what do you have to say to other people in Louisiana about the need for change?
There needs to be a big change. The cap is unconstitutional.
It should be unlimited, right?
It should be unlimited,
Yeah.
and you should be awarded enough money so that you could take care of your family.
To compensate you for the loss.
For your loss,
Yeah.
because you can't just replace somebody that was there taking the children to church and their games and their piano recitals.
Someone they love.
And somebody they love. There was nobody to walk my daughter down the aisle.
Yeah.
And the cap is unconstitutional, and it needs to be changed. Doctors should be held accountable.
Yeah. How many years has it been now?
It's been 24 years. But
Still
it's
miss.
still not easy.
Yeah. Still miss him.
I still miss him, and the worst part is it just tore our family apart because my youngest daughter was 9, and about a year later she got mixed in with the wrong crowd. Sometimes I didn't know where she was at night. And then the older daughter would fight a lot with the youngest daughter, and to this day they hate each other.
I'm sorry.
So basically everything that I had is gone.
Yeah.
And it still hurts, and I'm lonely.
What do you have to say to your friends, people that don't know you, about what needs to change in Louisiana to protect victims and victims' families like yourself?
No, it definitely needs to change. If doctors are held accountable for their actions, then you wouldn't have people like us that have to hurt for years.
Yeah, we've done a lot of these types of shows, and doctors are human beings. They make mistakes, okay, like anybody else, right? But what I see, missing in this moral compass, if you will, is their inability, because they're afraid of paying a lot of money, to step forward and say, I screwed up. What do you need?
Right.
And that should be there in all fairness. I want to thank both of you for coming on the show. It means a lot to America. It means a lot to me. And hopefully someone will hear your voices. And hopefully there will be a change someday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Jackson, the insurance company, selling, in the case of, is it Susan Arrington, a $10 million policy? Was it her case?
Yeah, the hospital that her husband went to
had a $10 million.
was owned by a Tennessee company. The Tennessee company had an umbrella policy in excess of the policies here in Louisiana.
Okay. What does this $10 million represent? Why would they pay $10 million?
Because that umbrella policy covered all of their hospitals throughout the United States.
Just $10 million.
Just $10 million, but that was an umbrella policy over and above the coverage they had in Louisiana.
Okay. Now, you mentioned another thing. There are doctors, like you mentioned, the dentist, that buy coverage in excess of $500,000.
That's true.
So the insurance company is screwing the doctors by selling them the policy, knowing full well that they'll never have to pay more than $500,000 anyway.
The doctors purchase the insurance for their own sense of well-being. They're satisfied.
But they're wasting their money. They're wasting their money.
Well, if the Supreme Court ever declares the cap unconstitutional, they won't be wasting their money.
Okay. You think that's going to happen in the state of Louisiana?
It needs to happen.
Are there any in your state legislature right now? Are there advocates for change right now? There are? Who are they? I'm just curious.
There are people in the legislature who recognize that having a cap adopted in 1975 and never adjusting it for inflation is totally lopsided. It's very unfair.
Well, can I tell you, a similar situation happened in California. We have a cap that was signed into law by our Democratic Governor, Jerry Brown, who's still the governor of California, which put a cap on pain and suffering, non-economic damages, okay? In 2016, in the general election, there was a referendum movement on the ballot to increase, you were talking about an adjustment from $250,000 to $1.2 million, 1.25. It got defeated on a margin of 2-1. That means 66% of California voters voted against the increase, and the reason they voted against the increase is because the insurance companies rolled out these 40-year-old TV commercials wherein they stated, and I want you to address this, they stated that the only reason that these amounts of money want to be increased is because there are greedy trial lawyers filing frivolous lawsuits in search of jackpot justice. What's your response to that?
I take these cases even though the people won't be getting very much money.
Yeah.
$500,000 is not enough to compensate these people for the damages they've suffered.
And the losses.
And I take them because they need somebody to represent them.
Yeah.
And they don't want it to happen to someone else.
Yeah.
But now the insurance companies are making money hand over fist. And they have plenty of money to pay lobbyists, to pay for advertising, to pay for whatever kind of commercial they want to pay for.
Yeah.
My clients don't have that kind of money.
Yeah.
Even after winning a case, they can barely get by.
Okay, I asked you a question before the show that I want to wrap up this show with, and that's this. Since the clients, when you win or settle a case, get so little money, why sue at all?
They have a need, a psychological need to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Okay, but let me counter that by saying, what happens to the doctors, the negligent and incompetent doctors? They continue to be able to practice, don't they?
They do.
Okay, so they're bad doctors, they continue to practice their medicine. And second of all, the most important question is, if a person did not sue, and yet they don't have any money to take care of their horrible accident, a life care plan, they're a quadriplegic or whatever, can they recover? Can they get the medical expenses paid for either by the state of Louisiana or Medicare?
In cases where someone has been disabled by a medical malpractice,
yes,
then they may get disability insurance from Social Security, or the state may cover it under Medicaid.
But,
so
but
the taxpayers are basically paying the damage
for the
that
doctors.
should have been paid by the negligent physician or
Okay.
his insurance company.
Yeah. By the way, whenever we do a show like this, I want everybody to know that the majority of doctors are pretty good doctors, right? They're pretty good.
Absolutely.
You know, there's some bad apples out
I
there.
go to doctors.
Yeah. That's good, rather than, fortune tellers. But, the bottom line is, what I see a real big problem here is that I think statistically is maybe, 2 or 3% of the doctors cause 30% of the problems on a regular basis.
The National Practitioner Database shows that about 11% of the doctors are responsible for almost 50% of the...
So they could solve their own problems by getting rid of these bad doctors.
But they won't do that.
And the reason they won't do that is why?
I don't understand why they won't do that.
Okay, so let me ask you this one.
Doctors don't police themselves.
Yeah, but let me ask you this one. What is the Hippocratic Oath of a doctor?
That is, do no harm.
Do no harm. So if a doctor is practicing that Hippocratic Oath and he sees a fellow doctor not practicing it, what responsibility does he have to let the world know that this guy should be out of the field?
All professionals are supposed to have a duty to report bad practices by someone else.
Okay. Is there anything else you would like to share with America?
I'd like to address some of the false advertising that's going out there. One of the claims made by the insurance industry is that without a cap, there will be not enough doctors. People won't go into doctoring. Well, Illinois is a great example, and the United States, throughout this country, the number of doctors has increased steadily from about 1965 on, when they started keeping records. And the number continues to grow in Illinois, for instance, whether there's a cap or whether it's declared unconstitutional. If you look at the growth rate of physicians in that state, for instance, continues to grow no matter what.
Right. I have also seen, and to back up what you're saying, is the states that have passed caps on, for example, California, have had an increase in the amount of physicians practicing in the state, okay? And
it's going to increase regardless.
Yeah. And the insurance premiums have also increased.
This is true.
When the insurance companies told the doctors, hey, look, if we have a cap, your premiums will go down. The reason you're paying...
There's no cap on insurance premiums.
Yeah, that's a lie.
And the system is very unfair to the patient. The patient that gets injured, he has to pay. He has to take part of the cap money when he gets it to pay off the costs of prosecuting the case.
Yeah.
The insurance industry gets to deduct that as an
business
expense, and they add it to their premiums.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you very much for spending time with us, and keep up your advocacy. That's why we're here, because it's people like you that make a difference, people that continually have the best heart and the skills to help those that really need the help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.